Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent. Line's good. Got real close. The hair high, right? Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham Scott, alongside, as always, hello, Scott.
Sean, hello. There's two things I wanted to talk about off the top. Today that we're recording, it's October 23rd. Do you know what happened October 23rd? 31 years ago?
31 years ago. I'm going to guess that the Toronto Blue Jays won a World Series on a Joe Carter home run.
That is correct. It is 31 years to the day of Touch 'Em All Joe.
Nice.
So, I've been celebrating privately. And Sean, I got confirmation on the question we asked in last pod about when we went to see Lion King, and it was 1999.
Okay.
So, damn, that's a long time ago.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were both there at the same time?
That's what we seem to remember. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Nice investigative reporting, Scott.
Hey, it's I gotta do something in between shows, right?
Yeah. So another thing that we did in between shows is that we played another curling game Monday nights at the Ottawa Curling Club. Came away with a victory on Monday night. Scott, I feel like there was a math issue at the end of the game that, not that you were going to do something silly, but you were going to do something that could have potentially gone awry with the pick or something. And with the math of it all, you ended up just throwing it into the boards.
Yeah,
it's the correct thing to do.
I think it was psychological warfare, Sean, because I thought they were going to shake. And when they didn't, I thought, oh, well, okay, let's just try to score some points. And then you rightfully pointed out, like, a lot of things can go wrong here. So
yeah, don't
even risk it. So that's right. Feels good as a skip when you get to throw them away, and it's like the whole team did their job, and I don't really have to do anything.
Yeah, and you did it twice, and the first time you threw it away, that one almost went awry. Yeah,
it did. I threw it like towards the board, and it seemed to me like it fell back, but anyway.
A throw through. So for context, everyone, a throw through for a blank turned into a hit on the nose an inch away from scoring a point.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have done it the other way, though. Like, I couldn't have thrown it the other direction. There was a bunch of stuff out in front. So
you could have thrown it into the boards.
I tried, and I had the right turn on it and everything, and then it just didn't curl.
It did not. So that shows some of the challenges of strategy and shot making at the recreational level, which is what we want to talk about this week. With curling coming back on the TVs and the streamings, we wanted to talk about the differences between what you watch on the top level streams. I'm not going to include, with all due respect, the rec level streams that exist, which are great, and I love that they exist, but those do not apply to our discussion tonight. We're talking about, if you happen to see any of the streams from Sault Ste. Marie this past weekend, the Pan-Continental Curling Championship starts this week. If you watch the streams of that, we have a Grand Slam event coming up next month in Alberta, and then the subsequent Grand Slams, and of course, Scotty's Briar and the World Championships. The differences between strategy at that level and what you can expect on your rec level games, and strategy, Scott, that we're not sure necessarily apply, that they apply at the elite level because they're much, much better than the rest of us. But at our level, at the recreational level, are strategies that we're not sure are a good idea if you're aiming to win your game.
Yeah, I think there's like elements of the strategy. There's a basic strategies that will work at any level, but at a certain point, the ability to make the shots is more important than the ability to call the right strategy. If you know what I mean, right? Like your strategy can be perfect, But if your players can't make the shots that you're calling, like that perfect strategy dictates, then what's the point?
Yeah, and we've joked before, and I tried it. 8 draws to the button, you're going to score more than you're not at the recreational level. At the elite level, if you throw 8 draws to the button, maybe if you're the team with the hammer, you might score, but you're not going to do well there. But at the rec level, you can. So to me, that's a broad-based example of how strategy has to change. And I'm a firm believer that the team that makes the most shots at the rec level is going to win, independent of strategy. That is not always the case at the elite level because the margins are so thin.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little thicker at the rec level on average, I would say.
Yeah, and you're right that if you make the most shots, more often than not, you're going to win. It could be a case where everybody's making shot, and one shot makes all the difference, and you don't get the victory. But you're right. Generally, at the rec level, that's going to be a good recipe for success. So, what we're going to talk about then are some of the things that maybe think twice if you're in a rec game and you're calling these shots, or if your skip is calling them, maybe talk after the game about it, not during the game.
Yeah. So what do you want to start with, Scott? You want to go from the front of the house into the house?
Yeah, let's go from the front of the house and move sort of back.
All right. So the first one we have here are corner guards. And this is something that is talked about even at the elite level sometimes, where you throw a corner guard and it feels like you're playing 7 against 8 because you throw it and you never get the chance to use it, or you just ignore it for the rest of the end. And this is something that I am a firm believer in, that at the rec level, if the other team throws a center guard on their first, always come behind it, or 90% of the time come behind it. If you don't like coming behind it for whatever reason, I'm not fully opposed to playing to the wings, but in the house.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of margin for error too. If you call to the wings and you end up with a corner guard, okay, it's not going to tank your strategy. But you're right. And anecdotally, the amount of times I've seen people call corner guards and actually use them, I can count on one hand.
Yeah.
It never happens because the team without the hammer always wants to play the center, and you sort of end up chasing a bit around the center after if the first two are made properly.
Yep.
Like if the first two shots are, like if the first one goes through, sure, put up a corner guard. You don't want to put a center guard. Okay, there's nothing else threatening there. But yeah, if there's a center guard made on the first one, come around it. I think that's the way in which you will score more often than not. You might also give up more steals than you would otherwise. But the corner guards, they're not used properly, and then also become an impediment to drawing late in the end for the team with the hammer. So I'm with you that I would avoid it almost at all costs. If it's the last end and you need 3 points, maybe. But
then the other team shouldn't have thrown a center guard.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that stone shouldn't be there. And yeah, I think one of the things that bothers me sometimes about corner guards is that at the rec level, I've noticed people like to put them on the 4-foot lines too. And to me, that's not far enough away. Like it can be guarding the 12-foot. That's okay at the elite level, because you can expect, or you can make that point score, or a stone in the 12-foot score if you're playing corners and keeping everything open and going for the deuce that way. At the rec level, when people put them that close, they really do just get in your way, and it serves almost as a pseudo center guard. So I really don't like that part of it. I hate that it sets you up to potentially be chasing for the rest of the end. I'd rather have the other team chase me. And one of the things that we talk about when we play, I don't know if we've talked about it in the show though, is there's a lot of skips at the rec level who want to be shot stone after every time they throw.
Yeah.
You don't have to be. They don't count until the 8 stones from each team are thrown. But being shot and forcing the other team to chase you is better than you having to chase. And I think the key to this for me is when elite level teams go center guard, corner guard, come around, and then that's how the end is going to progress. They're able to make either run backs or board weight peels where their shooter can roll in top 12 foot, or they can do things with a degree of make shots with a degree of difficulty that you need to bring that corner guard into play if those first two shots, center guard, top four, are made. That level of skill doesn't exist in most rec level players. You can peel that center guard, but then again, you're just going to be chasing by their throwing centers, you're peeling, or maybe you're hoping they miss one. And even doing that, though, it's hard to bring that corner guard into play. So that's the thing that I don't like about it is you have to make a double or a run back or a board weight hit and roll, or you're relying on them to miss one or two shots in order to bring that guard into play. And that's a big challenge, I think.
Yeah. And you never want to be hoping or needing the other team to miss to set up your strategy. Yeah. So, there are instances in which it's fine to put up a corner guard, as I mentioned, if the other team's in the house or if the other team went through that kind of thing. And if you have a solid plan to use it. The corollary to this, Sean, is that a second corner guard is almost never.
That's
like
no chance.
Like never. I would rather double guard on one side than put up two corner guards in a rec league game. Another point is that the ice is not as good as the ice that you're seeing on TV. And so you're not often going to get as much curl to the wings at a regular curling club or a curling center. So again, like you're upping the degree of difficulty on your shot for something you probably won't use that much, something that is unlikely to help you come the end of the end. So that's my point of view on corner guards at the club level.
Yeah, I agree. So an offshoot of that is another one that comes up a lot in the elite level game are the run backs that you see with great regularity. And as I mentioned, I think to make corner guards pay off in a lot of cases, you need to make a run back at some point. And you see them on TV all the time, 10, 12, 15-foot run backs, no problem. And for, the rest of us, people can make run backs. Okay. I've made one or two over the course of my life. I've seen people make run backs, like called run backs. People make accidental run backs probably more often than the called run backs, to be honest, but you can see that happen. But on average, for your typical rec level player, they're not going to be a shot that you're going to make with great regularity. No. And that's something I don't like about them, or having to use them as part of your strategy or relying on them as part of your strategy. More often than not, you're probably going to end up with a peel. And I love peeling stuff, right? I do think that this is some peels translate, that nobody in the history of the sport has ever regretted peeling anything, right? I'm a firm believer of that. But run backs add a level of precision and difficulty that I don't think most rec level players can make with any great regularity.
No, and like the difference is that the precision that the players you see on TV have with the up weight is the real difference, right? Yeah. I think a lot of rec players can throw it really hard. A lot can't, which is also fine, but throwing it really hard with accuracy is the big difference. Really like I can throw it pretty hard, Sean. Yep. Am I accurate? No. Ish. Right. And what happens too is your release isn't as consistent. And so your ability to be consistent with where you put the broom and where you're aiming, like all of those things sort of multiply on top of each other, making it super, super difficult for run backs. As a rec skip, for me, I will call run backs when I'm okay with a peel.
Yeah.
But I think, let's try the run back and see. right? And then if it doesn't work, it's okay. If it's a run back where like a peel doesn't work at all, then I'm probably going to shy away from that shot.
Yeah, and I think that's the right way to go. That essentially you're calling it a peel. I used to play in a league, the Saskatchewan League, rest in peace, the dearly departed Sask League here in Ottawa. And they asked me to skip when I started, and I said, okay. And I skipped. But one of the tips that I got from the other skips was when you put the broom down for a shot, because there was a lot of beginners in this league and it was a lot of fun. I had a great time. But when you put the broom down, put it in a place where good things can happen no matter what. Right? Don't do a lot of precision. Don't do that. And I feel that way about run backs, that if you can get a peel pro side miss, if you can get some sort of a flash pro side miss because something else is out there that you can hit, like then okay. But if it's a be all end all do or die run back, that's not going to lead to a lot of success at the club level for a lot of folks. And the other thing, when you compare it to the elite level, is at the elite level, and I really wish that the Grand Slam would do something with one or two of these events, to have houses that, like, because right now if you look at a rock hard enough, it'll fly out the back of the house.
Yeah.
Like, so their houses are so much more active than 99% of curling clubs, curling facilities, at least in Canada. I can't speak for sort of facilities elsewhere in the world, but I would imagine there's a commonality to it, that you don't get the same action. So when you're playing run back, doubles, triples, whatever it is, you're not getting the same action on the stones and the same action in the house, because they're not as lively as what you're seeing on TV, which is another factor, I think, when you're making these strategy decisions, that what you're seeing on TV, where you sneeze and all 16 rocks are now on the end boards.
Yeah.
That's not what you're getting at the rec level.
No, and the stones themselves too are less lively. They're often older, and so they don't have the same kind of pop. So I think runbacks, not so great. Just to build a little on the runbacks, we talked about peeling. This is another thing that doesn't happen enough in most rec leagues, is that people don't peel. And a lot of times it's because the people who are playing lead or second or third sometimes aren't super strong hitters. We talked to our dad, and plays with the old guys during the day, and all they do is draw, and they're deadly with it. And so play to your strengths. But
if less than 15 stones are in play at the end of the end, something has gone horribly wrong.
yeah So it's to me, as somebody who skips, I want to make my last shot as easy as possible, and oftentimes that means the fewer guards that are there, the better. So if you need to peel, don't be afraid of peeling.
No, it's never gonna run you afoul, really.
If you need to adjust for the abilities of your team, call it such that, if they miss it a little outside, there's other rocks over there that they can hit, or inside, the same thing. Like, know the tendencies of your team, and if you're calling one you're not super confident, make sure that there's like at least a pro side miss that's possible.
Well, actually, Scott, this is something I just thought of that I wanted to talk about, that I think fits into this category, and let's call it the Ben Hebert rule. That we've talked before that Hebert throws primarily out turns. Because you're the lead, you can kind of pick your turn, and you're going to throw primarily out turns. And I was talking with our buddy Dean on the scene, and on his Wednesday night team, the third that he plays with, he notes that she is much stronger. I can't remember which turn, but she has certainly a preferred turn that she likes to throw. So Dean has said that there are times where he adjusts his strategy or his shot calls based on her preferred turn. And there have been times when I've been playing with Dean and other players who say, well, this might be the right shot to call, but it doesn't fit within my strengths. And I understand that, and I can appreciate that. We're all out there for fun. You want to make shots. You want to feel good. But it occurred to me that since I would say most rec level players don't practice ever.
Mhm.
What if, say as a team, you sit down at the start of the year and you say, all right, first half of the year, we are going to intentionally try to play the game to lead us to shots that we're not strong at, so that we can try things that aren't within our forte, things that are new to us, things that we wouldn't normally do. And then, okay, the second half of the year, then we're going to try to get into our strengths, knowing that we've had now this time working on things that we're not strong at. And we have perhaps more tools in our proverbial tool belt. Like, is that something that, again, because practice ice is either not available or folks just don't have time to go practice a lot? I wonder about that being something that, okay, I love throwing board weight hits. I think I'm pretty good at it. I think I'm pretty accurate at it. I have a lot of fun throwing peel weight hits. Not always the most accurate, but I have fun doing it. But in a situation where we don't have access to practice, maybe say, okay, let's try working on these things that we're not strong at in a game situation, recognizing that, okay, we might lose more games, but it'll help in our development as players.
Yeah, I think that's a discussion that every team has to have, right? Is what is our goal for the season? What is our goal for the game tonight? Those kind of questions. When I played a little more competitively, we would even discuss between ends, right? What is our goal for the next end? And if the goal for the team is to get better at certain shots or to become a better player overall, yeah, you're going to need to do things occasionally that you're not comfortable with. I still wouldn't recommend putting up corner guards, but that's
sure. Right. I'm thinking in types of shot, like styles of shots.
Sure. Yeah.
So if you're not a
I
great
think,
intern thrower or out, or you maybe pop out your out turns, say, all right, tonight you're only throwing out turns.
yeah,
in a
yeah,
game.
you could do something like that. Or, for Steph, sometimes I'll give her like both turns intentionally to try and get play happening on both sides of the ice.
Yep.
Even a little bit to sort of break it down and make sure we've got a feel for both sides. So yeah, those are all little things that you can do as a team.
All right, Scott, let's move on to another style shot here, another strategy that I'm kind of half and half on this one because it doesn't really work at the elite level that much. And they're a lot more precise with it than at the rec level, which is why I'm not sure it quite ever really works that well at the rec level either. But that are freezes. And the reason why freezes I don't think work that much at the elite level is that they can Hulk smash out 999 out of 1,000 of them. So they don't really come to play that much unless they're behind a guard. If they're behind a guard, then at the elite level, they can play a little bit. At the rec level, there's a precision typically required for a freeze that a lot of players don't have. So I'm kind of in a half and half mode here that a really good freeze at either rec or elite level is a very difficult shot to defend against. But it's such a difficult shot to make that I'm not sure what the value is in calling them with any level of regularity.
Well, so this is an interesting one, right? Where you mentioned that at the elite level, freezes, like open freezes, are pretty hard because they're so good at Hulk smashing rocks out of there.
Yeah.
I think at the rec level, precision freezes, when made, are a lot more effective because it's harder for the typical player to Hulk smash a frozen rock out, even if it's on the corner. So in that sense, it's almost a better shot at the rec level than it is at the elite level. You mentioned the degree of difficulty though, and that's, I think, the great equalizer where there are degrees of freezes, I think, that are that sort of make the shot not that bad of a call to me, where I say, okay, like let's put one on top. If you bump it a bit, it's okay. If you're a little bit short, it's okay. We can raise it later. Like if your freeze is like, we need to freeze here and be dead on the nose in order to win an extra end, then yeah, that's a really tough shot.
Yeah.
But it's more the circumstances that have put you there, right? As opposed to the strategy. Where if you're calling a freeze, halfway through an end, let's freeze, sort of corner freeze, so that if they hit it, it might jam somewhere or something like that. I think it can be pretty effective. Again, the precision isn't always there for where it's going to be. But at least when I'm calling freezes, I know that I've got a range of outcomes in my mind that are all acceptable. Some will work much better than others, but I'm overall accepting a wider range for what's going to be thrown at me than in an elite game.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Another thing that I wonder about sometimes at our level is if you have a stone that's behind the tee line and they make a really good freeze and it's early in the end, I think more elite level teams are willing to hit that scenario and knowing they're only going to lose their own stone to which the opponent's stone is frozen than rec level teams. I think at the rec level, you think, well, that's not going anywhere. Yeah. Where, I mean, you can hit it and lose your own stone and be in a better position, but oftentimes teams don't want to lose one of their own stones, or potentially if you do that, maybe you won't be shot and it's the second last stone. It doesn't really matter that much, but that's another thing about freeze is that a lot of times people are struggle, I find, to get out of freezes because they're loath to lose one of their own stones.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That I always think of a stone behind the tee line as something that, well, it can't get better than that. No. So is it worth keeping it if it's really hindering me from getting one of theirs out? Maybe, maybe not. Do I want a bunch of junk at the back so that, it'll be harder to get mine out? Maybe I do. So, I see both sides there.
Yeah, well, that was interesting because we had one actually on Monday. I think they had a corner guard and we had one back 8 foot. So they last end we're up 3. We have the hammer. They have the hammer. We're up 3, and we throw our first through, and then their team tries to throw a corner and comes in. So Steph, our lead, she hits it and rolls kind of behind the tee line. They throw a corner guard. I was wondering, do we peel our own out in that spot? Try to peel ours out. And you called to come into the top 4 foot. I was terrified of coming light, so I put it into the warm room at that point. But that was one in my head. I was like, oh, maybe we peel our own out and just not have stuff in the house. But again, at the rec level, you could also make the case of just pile stuff into the 4 foot. It's so hard to get rid of things.
Yeah, exactly. That was sort of my thinking. Like, let's just put a bunch in, put the pressure on them, because we couldn't peel the corner guard at that point.
No, we couldn't. It was the 5th stone of the end. So Scott, another one then that comes up in terms of in-the-house play are triples. And in particular, I'm thinking of the 90-degree rule that comes up a lot when you watch on TV, that if essentially things are creating a 90-degree angle off of the top stone, what type of triangle is that?
Well, a right angled triangle.
A right angle triangle, yeah. So if you get a right angle triangle between the 3 stones, you should be able to make a triple. This is one that I don't think a lot of rec level players try it until February or March, roughly, when more and more games are on TV and more people are watching. But early in the season, you don't see it that often. But again, this is one where at the elite level, they can throw it so much harder. The stones and the houses are livelier than what you get at the rec level. They're more precise on how they can do it. Whereas at the rec level, I don't think this is a legitimate option for 99% of the players out there. Maybe every so often, sure. Like I made one by accident, I remember a couple of years ago. Totally by accident. And that was only because 2 of the stones were on the edge of the 12 foot. I did not have to move them very far. So it can happen every now and again, but this is one where I don't think you, as a rec level player, can really bank that often on making a 90-degree triple.
Yeah, probably not. Again, it's about the precision and the spot on which you need to hit that top stone to be able to make those 90-degree triples. I mean, I don't see any real like downside to calling them as long as you know that they're unlikely to be made. And if you call it by saying, it's okay if we roll out, let's try it. Maybe we'll get 2 of them. Maybe we'll just get 1. But if you're okay with it, then you can do that. Another way to approach that kind of situation is to throw a little bit less weight and just try to make a double. And in that sense, you've sort of accomplished some of the goal of the shot. And by having less weight, it's a little easier for the sweeping to control, and a little easier for the thrower to be more accurate.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another part of it too is doubles or triples is being okay with not necessarily removing rocks from play. So on a double, the stone you make contact with originally, sure, you want that out of play, but the one that you're rolling onto, be prepared for that not to go out of play. And that being okay, right? So play that strategy in that way for most scenarios. If they're on an angle and you're just kind of blowing them up, then yeah, you want both of them to go. But if it's that traditional double, depending on where you play, again, with houses that aren't that lively, stones that aren't that lively, it can be hard to move stones, especially if you got to move it 6, 8, 10 feet sometimes.
Yeah, no doubt. You need really strong legs to be able to push that hard, and a strong core to brace yourself so that you don't fall down.
There you go. Yeah. All right, Scott, last one on my list here of shots that you see at the elite level. And this is one you don't see that often anymore, but I'm calling it the Dacey because I don't know what really else to call it. And if you go back to that great 2004 Brier final, Mark Dacey against Randy Ferbey, there were 2 stones in the top 4 foot, and Mark Dacey used those as a guard, comes back into the back 12 foot, uses those as a guard. That ends up being a counter in the end. This is a shot that, again, high risk, very difficult. Very few rec level players ever practice draws to the back of the house. Mm-hmm. If you do practice, you're trying to put it top 4 foot, top 8 foot, be above the tee line. That's what you're constantly drilled on because that's where you want your stones. So rec level players aren't practiced on that. The other one is if there are multiple stones in the top 4 foot and you come behind them, making sure that you are removing those stones without jamming takes a level of precision that exists at the rec level, but a jam is certainly not unheard of.
Yeah. And I think if you're in a situation where there's a stagger at the top of the house and you want to come behind that, that's good. And just piling rocks into the house is never a bad decision. But you're right; it's hard. The other thing I was thinking as you were talking was the sweepers too. As a sweeper, you're sort of terrified of sweeping it through.
Yeah.
Right. And so you would err on the side of light, which is also not good in that situation. So
for sure.
The skill required from your sweepers to understand where it's going to end up and then be able to effectively get it there. That's another degree of difficulty on top of an already pretty difficult shot for the thrower. So yeah, it's one of those things that it's, if you're desperate, you can try it, but I would avoid at most of the time.
Yeah, it's a real tough one. If you can pull it off, great, but it's it's tough. Yeah, I think it is dependent on overlap. I think for sure.
Yeah, and yeah. So if you've got the stagger there, that's going to protect your rock, and the other team is going to need at least 2 shots to get rid of it, then it can be worth it. But it's awfully difficult.
Yeah. So those are the list, or that's the list that I have, Scott. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to make note of?
Well, the one I thought about, you don't see it that often, and probably because it's not happening at the pro level anymore, but it's the tick shot.
Yeah.
I think like if you make a tick by accident, that's great, but calling it again, these teams aren't practicing very much. It's a lot of sweeping and communication that is not as good at the rec level as it is in the pros. And to what end? Then you end up with 2 corner guards, and we just spent 10 minutes
Right.
talking about how we don't like corner guards, right? So I don't really like the tick call, Sean. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's really hard to pull it off. And yeah, I would say more often than not at the rec level, you're just basically going to create staggered guards.
Yeah.
Really. And that's not great. Again, if you want to go open side, that's a play there. If you're thinking a tick, I think open side in the house can work in your favor, given a situation where you might be throwing a tick shot. So something that could work, or coming behind it, throw through potentially could work, or certainly be better than the potential outcomes of a tick shot. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it falls in the same category to a degree as a split. The difference, though, I think is I don't think you should ever throw a split at the rec level before the last shot of an end. As the last shot of an end, I'm into it, and basically have somebody who, as a skip, isn't necessarily thinking about the split, is thinking about throwing a T-line shot.
Yeah.
And if it over curls and you tap it in for one, great. If it under curls and you just draw in for one, that's great too.
Yeah.
And if it's curls enough and you can tick and get a split, great. Like, that's the only scenario where I think our skill level is such, right? We're not Kevin Cooey who can split off of another stone and get the gear into the house, right? Like those are shots that are very, very difficult. Take a level of precision to say that I don't think most players, rec level players, when they watch on TV, truly appreciate how skilled those players are, and not just the thrower, as you say. It's a 4-person shot to make that work. The level of skill that it takes to make a really good tick.
Yeah. They're tough. I'll push back a little bit on the split. Sometimes, if you've got your rock at the top of the house and you want to get another rock in, but you have the hammer and you don't want to come behind it and set up stuff in the middle. You want to spread them out. Maybe you try a tick, understanding, of course, that a straight up draw is not so bad, or an angle tap kind of thing. But yeah, it's for a split to score. Yeah, I think waiting till the end of the end is the way to go.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are the shots then that we see on the TV, some more often than others, that might not necessarily always apply at the rec level. Let us know what we missed out. Shots that maybe you see on TV that you don't want to call, or shots that you do want to call and have some success with. So let us know about that. Speaking of curling on the TV, Scott, well, maybe not on the TV in this case, but the Pan Continental Curling Championship is going to kick off this Sunday in beautiful Lacombe, Alberta. Brad Gushu and Rachel Holman representing Canada at this event. It is at the Gary Moe Auto Group Sportsplex here in 2024. 5 berths for the men's and women's World Curling Championships are on the line, really 4 on the men's side, because Canada is already in as the host. So we have the other countries that are competing, A and B side events here for both the men and the women. On the United States, on the American side, the Canadian side start against the United States on Sunday afternoon against Corey Tees. That's their first game. Other teams in the field: Chinese Taipei, China, New Zealand, South Korea, Mexico, Japan. On the women's side, over on the men's side, the Canadians kick off against South Korea. Also in the field: Chinese Taipei, New Zealand, the United States, Japan, Australia, and China. So that is your A side field. Scott, what do you expect from the Pan Continental?
Sorry, Sean. I'm just filling out my registration for the curling channel to be able to. Oh man, the user already exists. I guess I already did sign in or sign up, but I haven't paid yet. I don't expect anything too crazy. You mentioned, right, Sean, TSN is not covering this event.
Nope.
So they obviously don't think anything very interesting will happen. Also, it's not at an arena, so the production costs or the production quality might be different, something that they're not willing to put on TV or won't get the viewership for. So to be honest, I'm not expecting much. The most interesting storyline from a Canadian perspective will be Brendan Botcher playing with Brad Gushu in their first event. Otherwise, I don't know if I think the Team China angle is something to watch for this event. A Chinese team won a Bonspiel a couple of weeks ago, a pretty big one. I don't know if it's the same team or not, but their sort of re-entry last year into the world stage, it was a story that we were watching, and I think it bears watching again here this week in Alberta.
Yeah, you'd certainly expect them to get back into the World Championships here in 2025. So that does take a spot potentially away from New Zealand, for instance, to try to get in, which we've seen the past couple of years. So who's representing this region? And by the region, I mean everywhere else in the world other than Europe, which is now this region.
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to get in, and whose spot is gone because China is back in? Because, yeah, you would expect them to be in contention here to get into the main draw of the World Championship.
Yeah.
In terms of the B side, there's a B side of this event. The team that finishes last on the A side does get relegated down to B. On the men's side, you have Brazil, Hong Kong, India, Jamaica, Kazakhstan, Kenya, Nigeria, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. On the women's side, you have Australia, Brazil, Hong Kong, Jamaica, Kazakhstan, Kenya, Nigeria, and the Philippines. And that's, Scott, as I say, you got two groups now at the World Curling Federation, Europe and everybody else. That list really highlights it, that you got folks from basically every corner of the world coming to look home here for the B-side championship. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, to be honest. We saw the America's Challenge didn't really hit, wasn't really the most effective way to do it. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if this is either, but I don't know what the actual answer is if this isn't the answer. So we'll see who gets promoted up from the B side there. Of course, on the women's side, we always do root for Hong Kong because Ling is local for us, so we root for her. But yeah, it's always fun to see the B side teams and who's going to get promoted, because again, you see teams that you don't see at a lot of world curling events.
Yeah, exactly. I think you said Kenya there, Sean. I think this will be their first
They've certainly, I think, first pan-con. Yeah, they've been at mixed and mixed doubles before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so all these emerging curling countries coming together to play at a pretty high level, and like we saw with the mixed last week, it's always fun when you can get a bunch of countries together, a bunch of curlers getting the chance to perform on the world stage is a lot of fun. So I'm buying my season pass to watch, and yeah, looking forward to catching a few games.
Yeah, I do think it'll be interesting to see that, or whether or not, essentially on both the men's and the women's side, and sort of, I know Canada has the spot already booked on the men's side for the Worlds, but you got Canada, the United States, China, Korea, Japan. Can anybody crack that? In particular, I would say New Zealand, and on the men's side, for instance, Anton Hood is back. Change on the New Zealand side of the women's side in terms of who's representing the team, but can anybody crack that kind of group of five as such to get a world championship spot? I think that's kind of where the intrigue is for this event. And obviously, I mean, who wins as well. But you would expect the winner to come out of those five.
Yeah, I'd say the winner less so than the intrigue for the world championship berths.
Yeah. So that's starting on Sunday, only available through the World Curling Federation stream. The other thing, Scott, piece of news that came out, that Curling Canada is looking for a title sponsor for the Canadian Olympic curling trials. Used to be Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is not out of the curling game, but they're out of the title sponsor curling game. So Curling Canada is looking for a title sponsor for this. And for the mixed doubles trials. Also noted that there is not currently a broadcast deal in place for the mixed doubles trials. Now, they haven't had a mixed doubles trials in a minute because they didn't have one for the 2022 Olympic Games that was appointed. So we haven't had one since 2017. Those were on CBC. And by CBC, I mean CBC streaming online, which, not to get into the realm of politics or anything else in this country, but there is, and I only know this, Scott, because I pay attention to this because I studied the CBC for the better part of a decade. That's what my doctorate is in. But there are changes on the table for the CBC's mandate. So how that will ultimately impact sports, I'm not sure. If there happens to be a change in government, that could also impact what the CBC is going to do moving forward. And that, at least in terms of the timeline of when an election is legally required in this country, is mandated in this country, that is before the trials will take place.
Yeah.
So independent of what happens between now and then, whenever an election happens, one will happen before the next trials. And the CBC is in the political realm at this point as part of the platforms of the parties. So what the CBC does, what happens with the CBC, I will watch with great interest as a historian of the institution. From a curling perspective, it does lead to questions as to what the CBC can do in terms of its streaming apparatus. What can it pick up on? TSN hasn't really demonstrated an interest in mixed doubles. Neither, frankly, has Sportsnet or, by extension, the Grand Slams. And the article that came out was very clear that they are surprised to a certain degree at Curling Canada, and I would think at the World Curling Federation, that mixed doubles has not had the take up and the popularity that was expected when it was first added to the Olympic program. So for as much as they're going to get a title sponsor for the 4-person trials, who it'll be, I don't know. Frankly, I think it'd be hilarious if it was like the Keg or something. Right? Keg here, then go to Montana. Go to the Keg in December and go to Montana's in March. But the mixed double side of it is much more interesting to me, that the traditional places of curling haven't picked it up, hasn't really picked up at the rec level for I think financial reasons primarily, that you're cutting the number of people who are in the facility in half. So that one for me is a lot more interesting for the curling side of it. And then for personally for me, what the CBC's involvement can be moving forward, given everything that's going on around the CBC.
Yeah, lots there, Sean. I think we're probably looking at a Game of Stones curling trials, right? I think we can.
Well, mixed doubles. We could probably pull the mixed doubles.
Rustle up the dough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna bet that it'll probably be home hardware or something like that, but that's just me randomly speculating, as I'm wont to do.
Mr. Mike's, and Mike McEwen is your Olympic curler from Canada, just purely because of the name.
The new Magic Mike movie will be the sponsor. Yeah. Like it is pretty interesting how that will all shake out. I for one don't really care who the title sponsor is, right? Like, it doesn't change the event meaningfully, except I have to watch more Montana's commercials or Tim Hortons commercials or whatever. But the action on the ice doesn't meaningfully change based on the sponsor. So in one hand, I don't really care, but on the other hand, there should be a title sponsor for this mixed doubles trials. I think, like, when I think of mixed doubles, I think a lot about soccer in the United States, where everyone was like, oh, when they hosted the World Cup in '94, oh, everybody's going to be playing soccer, and it's happening, but it's slow, right? Like, it's not overnight. It's 20 years later that the soccer is reaching its peak in the United States. And maybe I'm wrong about that, and really nobody still plays soccer, but that's kind of the idea that I have, is that it's going to take 20 years from the time it's in the Olympics to the time that it's really thriving. And part of the reason, Sean, you said, is like there's fewer people in the club. So economically, for a club or a curling center, it's not as good.
Yeah. You're
But
cutting your revenue in half.
You're cutting your bar revenue in half. But like,
but also your fees, your registration. Like, are people going to pay double to play mixed doubles versus a normal 4-person league?
No, but you can shorten the time too, right? So you could get 3 draws on in an evening. And if you're a curling center that's doesn't have a bar facility, and then you don't really care, right? You just want the turnover,
yes,
and people coming through the doors, and then maybe they're buying equipment at your shop, or they're registering for other leagues, right? Mm-hmm. So until curling centers and curling clubs make it a priority, it's not going to be one. No. Right? At our club, we can't. There's no ice time left.
Not at the moment.
Right?
No.
The leagues have it all booked every evening.
Yeah.
And so there was idea, okay, let's do like Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings, but then you have bonspiels that come in, and it's more lucrative to get a rental, from an outside group than to have a mixed doubles league. So even if you just call it a doubles league, it doesn't have to be mixed doubles, right? Yeah. But even then, it's just not working for clubs at the club level. And because of that, the demand isn't telling the clubs they have to do it. So there's like, I don't know, a bit chicken and egg, right?
Yeah. Cause we saw there was a golf and country club in Toronto this week that announced the closure of its curling side. The golf side's doing great, but they're not going to do curling anymore. And even at places like that, the idea of mixed doubles is not caught on as a game changer, as a lifeline for these facilities. Now, golf and curling clubs have a different dynamic to them, especially ones that have initiation fees for the golf side and high fees, and the curlers come in for $500 in the winter or $1,000 in the winter, and all the golfers get up in arms because so there are other dynamics at play, and I don't know the specifics of that one, but certainly if you're in Ottawa and you talk to somebody who only curls at the Hunt Club and doesn't play golf at the Hunt Club, just say, what's the deal with the Hunt Club? Get yourself a couple drinks. You're not going anywhere for like an hour, right? So like there are dynamics at play at certain places, but the reality of the sport contracting at the recreational level and mixed doubles not being this panacea so far to save facilities, I think that's a factor. And one of the things that I think has hurt the take-up of the sport at this point, and I think has hurt the TV side of it, the consumption of mixed doubles, is that there is a sameness to a lot of the ends because the initial setup is always the same. So the first 2 or 3 shots of the end, there's no strategy to think of because you're always doing the same thing. Even with the power play, it's going to be all the same stuff. So I think that hurts it a little bit, where you don't have the variety of strategy, the variety of shots that you might see at the elite level of 4-person play. So I think that has hurt a little bit, because I remember, Scott, when we look back at those 2018 Olympics in Korea, we were thinking, okay, like the mixed doubles, this was great. Then you watch the 4-person game, and I think our initial thought was, oh, this comes across as a lot slower and mixed doubles will take over. But then when we got to 2022, the mixed doubles looked the exact same as 2018, but you could see the change in the evolution in the 4-person game that we just haven't seen that yet in the mixed doubles game. That's not to say it's not going to happen or things could change, but right now it feels a little static in mixed doubles on that regard. And the other thing that I think hurts it, at least in Canada, is it feels like a backup for a lot of the 4-person players. We'll see if this cycle changes it, where people like Laura Walker, Kirk Myers, who are focused exclusively on mixed doubles. But in the last cycle, it felt like, well, okay, I'd much rather go to the Olympics with my 4-person team, but if I can't, I'll give it a try with this.
Yeah. And it's the kind of game that the shot making is the most important part of it. So you can throw a team together. Your dynamics are important, but not as much as in a 4-person game where there's communication and sweeping and all those kinds of things that there's less of at the mixed doubles level.
Yeah. So those are a couple news points that came up this week, and we'll keep an eye on what happens there with Curling Canada and the title sponsorship and television coverage of the mixed doubles, and then just the title sponsorship of the 4-person Olympic curling trials as we zoom in on about 13 months away from kicking off the 4-person Olympic curling trials here in Canada. And with that, I think that'll do it for this week. So if you have not subscribed yet, please do wherever you get your podcast, like, rates, comment, all that good stuff helps other people find the show, keeps us growing. Of course, head on over to GameStonesPod.com. All of our past episodes are available in the podcast tab, the episode tab. Merch is also available. Getting a little chilly here in the nation's capital over the weekend. So toques, hoodies, all that stuff is available on the merch tab. And of course, if you want to let us know what you want to hear on the show, GameStonesPodcast@gmail.com. Game of Stones Pod on the socials, except for Facebook, where we are Game of Stones Podcast. Scott, as I said, the weather is turning. Now, you're a meteorologist. You're not necessarily an arborist, but somebody said to me today, the fact that we've had some warm days and really cool nights where we've had, 15 to 20 during the day and then below zero at night has led to some spectacular colors here in the nation's capital. The trees and the leaves are bright and beautiful. It is absolutely spectacular outside right now here in the Ottawa Valley.
Yeah, it sure is. And I went up into Quebec a couple of weeks ago for Thanksgiving, and the colors were not quite as nice as they are right now. So even that little bit of extra time where it's gotten quite cold has really helped. Now today, Sean, there's a big cold front going through. We've had highs of 23 or 24 yesterday and 20 today. My window is open as we speak, and I'm getting a very cool breeze coming in. So the cold front is coming through. The high tomorrow is 10. And with that, we had, as I went to the gym today, we had quite a few leaves come off of the trees.
Yes.
That I noticed since Monday. So very, very fall, very beautiful. But I don't think it'll be around that much longer.
Yeah, I feel like once you get to November, you're just kind of pushing your luck on the leaves.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful here. Apparently it's beautiful in parts of the Northeast in the United States as well. So much so that they're being overrun with
the leafers.
Leafers. Yeah. So if you can get out, if you're somewhere where the leaves are nice, it's beautiful out, or you're getting some good fall weather, do enjoy it, because before you know it, for those of us in the northern climes, there will be snow on the ground and we will be hunkered down, but there will be more curling on our TVs, and we will be here to talk about all the goings on in the world of curling. So until we talk to you real soon, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that insert.
Make the final.